Hey, can you guys hear me? All right. Hey, thanks for having me. My name is Jake Brukhman, and I'm the founder and CEO of CoinFund. CoinFund is a crypto-focused investment firm. We've been around for over 10 years now. And on the intersection of AI and Web3, I would say we're one of the earlier and most invested kind of crypto-focused funds, starting with companies like World, Jensen, Pluralis, Prime Intellect, Pearl, Bagel Network, and so on. This is a general talk about how the AI agent world I think, is going to motivate a lot of Web3 demand. And I just want to say, I gave this talk 6 days ago in Hong Kong, at Consensus Hong Kong. And since that moment, I've had maybe like dozens of conversations about this topic with people in the industry and in the AI world. And I would like rewrite this whole talk from scratch just in 6 days, which gives you an idea of how fast this space is moving. So I'll go through these slides, but I'll also kind of go off slide and show you some of the differences. Obviously, we're seeing agents everywhere, and we have this notion that there's going to be a lot of them. You know, it started with like kind of Claude Code growing, and then more recently, obviously, OpenClaw has made it available to people who are less technical, and you see this crazy explosion. I just want you guys to think about, as we go through these ideas, like, you either believe that a lot of agents will be operating on behalf of people on one hand, or on the other hand, you might believe that agents will be at some point fully autonomous and like have their own wallets. If they're operating on behalf of people, they will have these economic forces of competition operating on them to try to do everything like more efficiently, and I think that's going to drive them, as we'll see, to blockchains. And if they're acting autonomously, because they're not legal persons, and because they can't open a bank account, because they can't have their own passport, they're going to have these other blocks or frictions driving them toward blockchains. So let's keep that in mind as we go through. So the agentic world is, as I said, moving very quickly. Since I made this slide 6 days ago, OpenClaw has now surpassed 200,000 GitHub stars, and that happened over weeks. And it's constantly OpenAI and Claude are launching things. Just Sonnet 4.6 launched yesterday. And this is just a huge topic, obviously. You know from being here at ETHDenver that this is a topic for all kinds of crypto companies and blockchains, especially companies dealing with stablecoins, because they're concerned with the payment side. And we see a lot of blockchains like Solana, Base, Monad, etc., running hackathons and prize pools for integration with agents that are coming out all over the world. But a lot of what agents, I think, need, and I will argue, comes from ideas that we have been thinking about in Web3 for 10 years. And these are things like digital micropayments, autonomous permissionless services that they can go and use and buy. And also that comes with smart contracts. That's another thing that I talked to a lot of people over the last week, is like, agents will want to do commerce, they want to do business, and payments are just sort of the simplest agreement that you can make. But obviously agreements could be more complex. They could be vesting schedules. They could be paying someone weekly on a retainer. They could be like offering some kind of digital good in exchange for service. And the best fit for that is smart contracts. Agents are going to require privacy and security primitives. These are things that, as we'll see, we worked on Web3 a lot. And then we can talk about proof of humanity as well. So think about micropayments. Like the Twitter API used to be $100 a month. This is like pricing that regular people can't afford. It's pricing for companies. And now what they're doing is they're going to a pay-per-use. It means you can pay a cent, like to post a tweet, right? It's suspiciously timed with the explosion of agents. And of course, an agent can maybe like go and send a bank wire on your behalf if you let them into your like Chase account, although Claude will not agree to do that. Of course, an agent can swipe your credit card on the website. Of course, they can use Stripe if they want. But if there's intense economic competition for efficiency for like the agent's owner, they will want to be rational. They want to use something that is cheaper. And what we can see is that blockchains are that thing, right? Like you can send payments on blockchains faster, cheaper, at all times of the day, and in a permissionless digital manner at all times with no human in the loop. And of course, stablecoins are now coming to market generally, and they seem to be a great candidate for this. And there are some CEOs like Jeremy from Circle, right, who talk about this a lot. And meanwhile, McKinsey is projecting, trillions of dollars of transactions by the end of 2030 being handled by agents, like a huge chunk of just business transactions. What evidence do we actually have? Well, I would say, in Hong Kong 6 days ago, I argued that the evidence was like fairly slim. Like we had in 2024, we had some virtual agents interacting together on the blockchain, paying each other, kind of as an experiment. We have some numbers around X402, which of course has been a huge topic here. And we see Stripe and such kind of buying companies with stablecoin rails underneath. But what I saw this morning was a startup that was offering AI agents the ability to inference other AI models. And they were doing that, and they were doing that with micropayments, and they were paying with USDC, and a transaction was coming in like literally every couple of seconds from a bunch of OpenClaw agents that people deployed. And like between the time that I wrote this slide and this morning, this became like so much more real because this company has only been around for like a week and a half. And it's already serving like hundreds of agents, and like who knows what it's going to do next month. The really kind of almost scary thing about this stuff from an investor perspective is that agents are really good at breaking down data silos. Like, as I said, they're very like dispassionate and they're very rational, and they're going to like if Twitter doesn't allow them to read tweets, they're going to route around Twitter and get data from somewhere else, and Twitter might become less relevant. They collect all of your data through APIs from all of your data sources, which means that those SaaS products, like their kind of data lock-in isn't as powerful anymore. Like sometimes humans are like lazy. They're like, I'm not going to go create an API somewhere and extract my data. But agents will do that instantly. And so suddenly you have this world where capital is flowing from agents kind of to the best products, and they don't have any brand loyalty or brand affinity. And what that also means is that if there's like a blockchain whose payments are cheap, and then there's another blockchain whose payments are cheaper, they might go to that blockchain. I don't think there's such a thing as the blockchain for payments for agents, because agents will just choose the better product every time. And so what does that mean for fees? How do we capture the value of that? And then this was the point about basically smart contracts, right? Like for 10 years in crypto, we've been sort of arguing that normal people can use smart contracts. They can get Ethereum wallets, they can put Ether in it, and they can kind of go on chain and do these decentralized applications. I think the reality is that that's really hard for most people, and most people have not done that. But for agents, again, this is the perfect interface. This is like the idea that decentralized apps or smart contracts, they just needed the right customer, and actually humans weren't the right customer. It was the agents were the right customer. We're seeing a lot of services being offered to agents online. These are things like decentralized data marketplaces. Um, if you've used OpenClaw, you know that one cool thing about OpenClaw bots is that get set a timer for themselves to come back and do something later, and this really creates the effect that they're running around doing things on your behalf. Well, there's people creating services for like cron jobs for them, and agents I think are going to be willing to pay for that. Security is going to be a really important issue. You know, a lot of people already have suffered through prompt injection attacks, where your agent basically like goes on a website, reads a snippet of code, then sends all your private data to an attacker, and they don't need read access, or they don't need write access to your stuff to be dangerous. They just need read access. And so technologies like zero-knowledge proofs, which allow you to validate some information without revealing the information itself, become a lot more relevant within agents, and the ability to compute in a multi-party way, like with FHE or TEs or et cetera, MPC, right, become a lot more relevant in an agentic world. And these are primitives that we've been developing in Web3 for many years. And I would say like zero knowledge has matured quite a bit in the last 5 years. And finally, I asked on the panel, I was a moderator of a panel yesterday at BAS, whether, like, do you guys think it's important to disambiguate, to determine who online is a human and who is an agent? And one of my panelists said, well, it might be a little bit offensive to them to discriminate, so we got to be a little bit careful. But generally speaking, you know, this idea of like the dead internet theory is that most activity online is already automated, already being done by bots and AI agents. And we have a lot of data to this effect. For example, like there's at least 4 studies that I've seen in the last few years that show that AI agents and LLMs beat humans at CAPTCHA, like decisively beat humans at CAPTCHA. And you watch Claude Code casually open up your browser and hit like, I am not a bot, like on the capture as he's doing it, right? Deep fakes is growing into a multi-billion-dollar industry, and so forth. And so in this context, the idea of proof of human, and of course I'm thinking about World, which is one of my investments, but also a number of other companies like Human Passport, Humanity Protocol that are working on this problem, really becoming rapidly more relevant in a world where you're like voting on stuff online. You're creating Sybil resistance. You're distributing UBI. You're distributing assets. And I think, at least on that level, you know, this determining who is human and who is agent becomes a lot more important. And this was just sort of a slide about how we've participated in this space, both from the perspective of companies like WorldCoin, Jensen, Bagel, Giza, Prime Intellect, Pluralis. Pluralis, by the way, really interesting discussion there about decentralizing training itself. These are companies operating on the intersection of Web3 and AI. And then companies like The Graph, Certora, Iris, and so forth are more like on the infrastructure side. So for example, if you're building a marketplace for proprietary data where you want agents to buy your proprietary data with micropayments, as we just discussed, Iris might be a great way to implement that. So I hope I've given you some ideas here about how AI agents will create demand for blockchains. But again, my message is that I think agents will converge on efficiency, efficient activity. And I think blockchains provide decentralized identity, decentralized storage, decentralized compute, services like cron jobs, services like inference, in a way that is like really fast, really native, and really efficient for agents. And so if I were a builder at ETHDenver this year, I would be thinking about these things. And I would also be thinking very deeply about why I can hold an agent's attention in such a thing, in such a service. Why will they not go to a competitor of mine, or why will someone be able to undercut me on price or something like that? If you're building such things, please come chat with me, and thank you.